Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Damage with me, John Arilla, and Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, how's it going?
Boo, boo, boo. It's going. Long weekend.
It was a long weekend.
Yeah.
Yes.
God, I was just like, oh, when will this free time be over?
When can I get back on the grind?
Another hot dog. Ooh.
Okay, that actually sounds pretty good. So not only did we have a 3-day weekend, but I had taken the previous Monday off, which you know because you filled in with Ravana.
That's right.
Having 2 3-day weekends in a row just reassures me how right I am when I say we should just have 3-day weekends. What is going on? Let's just do that. 4-day work week, 3-day weekends, glass half full, half empty, whatever. That's what we should have.
It's not pie in the sky either, because like the data shows that people are more productive in those 4 days.
Yeah, it almost seems like, I mean, look, obviously it's not gonna work in every industry. And I'm not even sure that the efficiency gains are gonna be generalizable over every industry or whatever. But the fact that it's better for people, it seems to be better for business. If we don't get it, it seems like, isn't it kind of just like that cruelty is like seen by the powers that be an important part of this process, and we don't want people to be freed up to have mental energy to, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the fifth day of work.
Academia.
The fifth day of work is truly just like team building exercise BS and like fun shirt Fridays and like random things that make.
I have a fun shirt. It's got a dragon on it.
Yeah, I know, but like people start drinking at like 3 in the office on Fridays, and it's just all this stuff to like paper over the fact that you're being exploited and overworked when we could all just be at home. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Not everyone's gonna get it. Like we would probably still have to do 5 shows, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make if everyone else gets an extra day off. And then they'll be more free to watch the show. So Fox News, get on this. People, no, their audience has been retired for 25 years anyway.
Yeah, no, they're like, we're good, we're chill. Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's something that we should work towards. My Labor Days plan, 12 Labor Days to start, 1 a month that we get off a Monday, and then every year we add 1 more until eventually 3-day weekends.
What about the idea that like robots were gonna enable us to not have to work in general? Instead, they're taking our most creative jobs, like painting and writing.
Me. Yeah. I was supposed to write bad sci-fi and fantasy, and now it's writing it for me.
Absolutely.
Anyway, with that said, we do have a lot that we're gonna be talking about through the course of today. So thank you for being here, everyone. It's a big old week. We got our Pride special coming up in just a couple of days, which I'm gonna be involved in. Very excited for that. Some awesome people that you'll recognize from appearances on the network, including Representative Zoe Zephyr will be appearing once again. So lots of fun to come this week. We're gonna be starting off the show with fun, partially because it's Francesca, partially because although I did have some days off recently, I was basically just lifting stuff and moving it around and constructing stuff. So I'm more exhausted than I can be than I've been in my living memory. So I need a little bit of fun. But we are, of course, going to be talking about the debt ceiling deal that appears to have been agreed upon. A little bit of good news coming out of Texas. How weird is that? Ted Cruz being reasonable, dear God. And one of the latest scams to afflict Trump supporters. Oh, also, is Target trying to turn your dog gay? We're gonna be talking about that in a little bit. So definitely stay tuned for the aftermath. And if you're on the linear platforms, or if you're listening to the podcast, know that always, every day, we release extra content that unfortunately isn't on those formats that you can get at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you should definitely subscribe and become a member there, and you can watch all our content. Anyway, with all that said, Francesca, are you ready to start this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, normally we start off the week by taking a look at the weekend and revealing a Monday menace. Well, we don't have that because Memorial Day ate Monday, which gives us this.
Cute.
Yes, Ashley did a great job on that. So it was Memorial Day, of course. It's a time to honor the sacrifice, I suppose. There's like the idea of what Memorial Day should be, and then there's what it actually is. If you have family members that served and you wanna, reflect on their sacrifice. I think that's perfectly fine. Generally, it's used to bash people into submission under like the guise of patriotism and tell them to never question anything, even if it's explicitly bad for the soldiers. Sometimes it's even worse than that, though. So we're gonna be profiling a few of the worst odes to Memorial Day, starting with Donald Trump, who notably not only did not serve, but worked as hard as he's ever worked in his life to avoid serving, who bleated this: "Happy Memorial Day to all, but especially to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for the country they love." That's great so far, perfectly fine. End the bleat there. Unfortunately, he didn't. He goes on to say, "And to those in line of a very different but equally dangerous fire, stopping the threats of stopping the threats of the terrorists, misfits, and lunatic thugs who are working feverishly from within to overturn and destroy our once great country, which has never been in greater peril than it is right now. We must stop the communist, Marxist, and fascist pigs at every turn and make America great again." He was able to do like a dozen words of yeah, the soldiers, but really it's about those of us who are trying to stop the commies. Equally dangerous, he said. He didn't say comparable. He didn't say equally important. He said equally dangerous. This is like, if stolen valor is a thing, this is as stolen as valor can be. He said, yeah, the storming of Germany or something. But me, I debated Joe Biden, and that's equally dangerous. Francesca, what do you think?
I just am reminded of, I think news broke, we called Trump like zombie Nixon, where like, he's just kind of like, yeah, if you were to exhume Nixon's body and like reanimate him, you'd get Donald Trump, throw a little bit of Reagan in there, of course, as well. But we are in a time. Think about like what he's hearkening back to, like the 60s, when there were there have been mass movements now, but like mass movements that fundamentally questioned, the way that things were, right? Whether it was the Vietnam War, whether it was extreme capitalism, now we have an even more extreme capitalism, and like I feel like we sort of let the words communists and Marxists kind of wash over us as if he's always been speaking this way, but he hasn't actually always been speaking this way. So that's something to note, when he's trying to like gain his sort of like fascist accolades, he's like, increasing his vocab. But again, we remember Donald Trump being the person who, visited a World War I memorial and was like, "What's this again? Who do I? Whose first wife was buried here? Is this a golf course?" Like, he has no idea. He doesn't understand sacrifice. He doesn't care. He thinks they're losers. He said basically they are losers. And Memorial Day, let's remember, is different than Veterans Day, right? It's to honor the people who died, gave the greatest sacrifice, in large part for wars for treasure, right? For oil, to stop communism in the case of Vietnam. So I mean, it's very ironic that like here you have, however many hundreds of thousands of Americans died in the Vietnam War to stop communism, as if that were any threat to Americans whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then you have him in the same breath saying, "And now we're still stopping commies, man."
Sure.
Like 60 years later.
Yeah. And look, there are certainly people back then, the same as now, that love the idea of being able to kill some people or whatever. And I don't feel like I need to honor those people. But even though I acknowledge that effectively every war for many, many decades has not been waged for anything approaching the way that it's been presented to people, you can still honor the fact that many of these people thought that's what they were doing. Bravery as a result of, bravery and self-sacrifice as the result of deception is still bravery and self-sacrifice.
Yes.
It's kind of sad, it's tragic, in a whole nother way because of the way they were lied to, but it's still brave and it's still sacrifice. So that's fine.
No, it's honor the war. It's honor the warrior and not the war, right? Gotta come back to remember that.
Yes, and look, you were mentioning how Trump has talked over time. Well, I just thought let's flash back, because that was obviously a pretty bad ode to Memorial Day. But back in 2018, this is 5 years ago, he tweeted at that time, Happy Memorial Day, which just seems like a weird way to say it. There's gotta be a better thing than Happy Memorial Day. How about I recognize Memorial Day or something, or somber Memorial Day, not happy. Like that doesn't seem right. But anyway, he says, those who died for our great country would be very happy and proud at how well our country is doing today. Best economy in decades, lowest unemployment numbers for blacks and Hispanics ever. I don't even like having to read that in his voice. And women in 18 years, rebuilding our military and so much more. Nice. Like 4 of those words were about the soldiers that had died. And then he immediately is like, but let me talk about me and all the great work that I'm doing. Obviously he's lying about that work. But even if it was true, that's not about the soldiers, that's about you, buddy. Stop trying to make everything about you. And it's so pointless. I mean, not that it matters. His supporters are immune to reason and self-reflection. But just doing one of the like stereotypical, like, oh, our soldiers things, that is also done to benefit you, but you don't talk directly about yourself. You just look like the person who loves the soldiers. But anyway, as much as I don't like his odes to Memorial Day, we do have others to get to. So why don't we jump directly into this video?
And this guy is just another career politician, and the voters are very smart. They see through it. Ron DeSantis has run for 4 different offices in the last 7 years. That's not someone who's looking to help the country. That's someone who's looking to boost his resume and get the next job.
Okay, so that's a Trump supporter on the news, or what passes for news these days, attacking Ron DeSantis, saying dude keeps running for a whole lot of different offices. So he was a congressman, he ran for governor, he tried to get in the Senate. When that didn't work, he went back to governor, and now they changed the law so he could like be governor, but clearly he was already thinking about becoming president, which should bother Republicans in Florida, but seemingly doesn't. So, okay, it's a good attack against him. The dude is just ambitious. He doesn't care about any of these positions. He just wants the next one. That seems fair. Well, obviously they need to defend themselves against that, and that's where it starts to get weird. So DeSantis War Room on Twitter tweets out, today the Trump campaign said Ron DeSantis is not someone who's in it for the country. Here's our response, and they show photos of when he was like a military lawyer or whatever. He was, of course, deployed to Iraq back in 2007. If you were a big Trump supporter, you could point out that in the same exact way that he was willing to be a congressman and willing to be a governor as a stepping stone to the Senate and the presidency, it's entirely conceivable that he went into the military as a lawyer because he thought it would help his political ambitions someday. That's just speculation, but you could make that case. But anyway, they decided to defend him some more. They put this up, okay, after someone who loves Trump posted that there are other bad soldiers, so why are you pointing out that you were a soldier? That's no defense. So they say Team Trump being in the military doesn't mean Happy Memorial Day. Okay, it's a good defense. It's a good defense. But then you see this, Liz Harrington decides to post as a reply a photo of Pete Buttigieg as a soldier. So the most charitable interpretation of this that I think, if I'm being overly fair, is look, DeSantis is bad and he was a soldier. So why are people implying that being a soldier is a good thing? Which would definitely be an about face for Trump supporters, for the right, that all of a sudden now being a soldier literally doesn't mean anything and who cares? But you could interpret it as there are plenty of other soldiers they could have pointed out that are Democrats, and they didn't do that. They did it with Buttigieg. We know how dirty Trump's team is. What are they implying here? I don't know, Francesca, what do you think? It's weird. I don't understand the attack, but this seems to be what they're doing.
Right. Harrington, obviously, I don't think I'm familiar with this. She's on the new, she's reconstituted Trump team.
Yeah. So it's been like a very prominent like person who tweets or whatever.
Oh, fun.
Like, blonde person who tweets.
Oh, yes. I aspire to be one of those.
Big thing.
No, that's exactly what they're saying. I mean, they're saying, yeah, look, here is a gay man who is a Democrat who also served. So it doesn't mean anything. And in fact, I'm using the fact that he's gay and a Democrat to denigrate the fact that he is a veteran. It's just
that's what it seems to be.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Look at him, and like the photo of him, he's looking hard AF. Like he's got a gun. He looks like he just came back from like a deployment. Like I do not fawn over any people in these images holding a gun. I am actually terrified of that. But if anyone, he's like in a bunk, like he sleeps there in that bunk. Versus like Ron DeSantis, who's like, I am a military lawyer, just making sure the torture's going okay. Oops, I mean enhanced interrogations.
Yes, the Guantanamo stuff, definitely. Yeah, and look, if you don't like either of those people, you could plot. Like I am suspicious of politicians who served in the military generally in the modern era because they all grew up in a time in which it was the dignified thing to do, and thus there's the perception that it could be a stepping stone, particularly if you deploy, but you're kind of in a safe-ish thing. I mean, it's still dangerous, but I don't know, like you could say it kind of seems like these are really ambitious guys. We don't think that they'd be willing to serve to benefit their careers. Anyway, I don't work for either of these campaigns. I'm not gonna write their ads for them, but you could say that. That's not what they're doing. They're basically just showing photos of soldiers and being like, I guess serving in the military is gay now, guys. I guess that's what it is. That's what I'm being told by many Trump fans, not because that's a position they've reached or it represents anything, but just because, I guess we're running against a soldier right now or a former soldier. Okay, I guess soldiers are gay. Like that is how contingent reality is for these people.
Yes.
I hate it. Anyway, let's move on to the most ridiculous one. Marjorie Greene, of all people, decided to, I guess, thank the troops to some extent. She tweeted, on this solemn day, good start, we honor the fallen soldiers who defended our nation's values. Their sacrifice serves as a powerful reminder that freedom is never free. Let's stand united in gratitude and remembrance. Hashtag Memorial Day, hashtag never forget. All of that seems perfectly fine. The tagline, home of the free because of the brave. Obviously, you get a little bit into propaganda right there, and her concept of free is debatable at best. But the thing is, and I want to be very clear. I don't care and it doesn't matter. But the flag that she has right there is not a regular American flag. It is a flag, if we could put it up once again, with 18 stars in it. Now, if this was almost any other politician, I would say, it's a small flag. They didn't think they could fit it, so they just did the 18 stars. But it's Marjorie Greene, so are we sure that it doesn't represent something else? I did research both on my own and through AI. I'm kidding. No official US flag has 18 stars. So it could represent when Louisiana was admitted to the Union. That became, at that point, the 18th state. So it would have been accurate as of then. You could say that it's hearkening back to an earlier time before all of those other states were added, I suppose. I don't know. Should I care? Maybe I shouldn't care. What do you think, Francesca? Are we gonna find out that it's a reference to there are 18 states with above 90% white residents or something? Like, what sort of weird, deep 4chan hole is this coming out of?
John, you're too online, and absolutely someone on the right, some weird bunker Nazi is making the exact same point. But it really is just lazy clip art. Marjorie Greene, yeah, she doesn't care. Her staff reads at a 3rd grade level. She reads at a 1st grade. That's why they're hired. You know what I'm saying? This is not anything. It is clip art that someone just Googled and was like, is this free? Yeah, well, if we scrub the Shutterstock thing, well, it's from China, but no one will figure it out. That's all this is.
Home of the free clip art because of the brave clip art thief.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe you're right. You know what? So let's forget about that. Just go back to the substance of it. She wants to honor the fallen soldiers because deep in her heart, she cares about their sacrifice, which is why she has always supported them, with a few exceptions. For instance, she is supportive of congressional Republicans' legislation that would make significant cuts to veterans, including in their health care. She doesn't care about that. Marcus Flowers points out she also voted against the Honoring Our Pact Act, a bill to provide protections to veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. So honor them and fill their lungs with toxic air, I suppose. She also at one point in an interview said that joining the military is akin to throwing your life away. To be fair, in the interview, she was saying a lot of young people think it's throwing your life away, but she didn't say that they're definitely wrong. And I would argue that if you were worried about that, and she apparently has identified that that's a thing that some young people think about, then maybe you would want to arrange things in a way that they wouldn't have to think that. That maybe if we had a much smaller defensive military, where if you sign up, the farthest you're gonna go is like Montana or something, and then you'll serve your 4 years, you won't needlessly die to protect corporate profits, and then you go on with your life and maybe get some money towards college, then maybe a lot of young people wouldn't think that it was a waste of money. Many of them might think that it's a worthwhile sacrifice of time to then get a benefit. But she's not working in that direction. She is fully supportive of an ever-increasing military defense budget that will always be used to justify it by sending soldiers abroad. She can pretend that she's against the Ukraine war or whatever. She's also advocating for us to invade northern Mexico.
Yep.
So yes, I can understand why some young people might have issues with the military that she would have us have.
It's just incredible because shoe on the other foot, if this were a Democrat, we would just never hear the end of it. Fox News would make this the headline for a week, right? Representative Ilhan Omar said that, the military is where young people go to die. Who's ever died after joining them? You know what I mean? Like, Ilhan Omar says that these wars were fought needlessly. Wow, but Trump can say they're losers because they died. Marjorie Greene can say it's throwing your life away, and then be like, yeah, why are we sending money to Ukraine, even though I'm gonna keep on voting for a bigger military budget every single year? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is like, we on the left and progressives, it's very difficult not to feel insane right now, because we have, and I know we're gonna talk about the budget, the deficit ceiling, and the fact that the military is completely safe from that, and the fact that the Biden and the Biden administration are absolutely in agreement with Republicans when it comes to increasing and not actually paring down that military budget, no matter what MTJ says, right?
MTG. We're gonna talk about that on the other side of the break, yeah.
Whatever, Anyway, so the point is it's sort of, it's just sickening. It's sickening because it's all bluster, and their form of isolationism is just like fear-mongering jingoism against a different enemy that's like, their flavor of the month.
Yeah. It's not isolation. You can't conduct like ongoing bombing campaigns and the soldier's boot wasn't on the ground, I'm an isolationist.
Right.
That's not how that's supposed to work. And then also advocate for the invasion of northern Mexico. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna take our break. When we come back, we will be talking about military funding when we talk about this debt deal. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, everybody, let's get to the big domestic news of the day. A deal has apparently been reached, and so far it seems like everyone hates it. I mean, Biden likes it. It's gonna raise the debt ceiling, and he thinks that it's a huge coup for him. Some of his defenders, I'm sure on CNN and MSNBC, are pretty happy about it. I hear Morning Joe's a fan, but I have some problems with a few things included in it. And some people I don't agree with on literally anything in politics, hate it just as much as me. So this is gonna be a fun story. First, here is Joe Biden's announcement about the deal that has apparently been reached, but not finalized yet.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone through, bear that in mind. Anyway, he says the agreement represents a compromise, which means not everyone gets what they want. I'm talking to you, pores. Anyway, that's the responsibility of governing. And this agreement, the rich get what they want. Let's be clear about that. Not everyone is not equally distributed across the economic spectrum. But anyway, those are my words. I'll go back to the president. This agreement is good news for the American people because it prevents what could have been a catastrophic default and would have led to an economic recession, retirement accounts devastated, and millions of jobs lost. That is one of my favorite sorts of statements in politics because it is not technically untrue, but it is also lacking in all of the context that it deserves. Like, why is it that we got to this point where you needed to make this deal with Kevin McCarthy and a new Republican majority that gives away a whole bunch of things that, oh shucks, you're sorry to have to give away, but it is a compromise. We could have not had to do this at all. You could have raised the debt ceiling before the Republicans took over, and this sort of deal wouldn't have been necessary. He doesn't mention that, of course. I have a feeling many of the boosters of this deal will not be mentioning that, but we are going to acknowledge that. We're also going to acknowledge that not everyone gets what they want, that abstract language. Yeah, it means specific things though. For instance, it means that there's gonna be cuts, I think they said like $186 billion or something to non-defense discretionary budgeting. It includes domestic law enforcement, forest management, scientific research. Oh, we still do that and more. It would limit all discretionary spending to 1% growth in 2025. So basically 2 years of budget cuts. They say growth of 1%, but inflation is higher than that, so it's cuts. Okay, and they're not doing defense, so you can sort of figure out where that's gonna come from. The military budget is going to increase to $886 billion next year, then again to $895. That's what they say. That doesn't mean that's what the final budget is going to be. When has it ever only gone up $9 billion in a year? So Biden gets to say this is a win because it's 2 years of budget cuts rather than the 10 that the Republicans had been looking for. Okay, so we're gonna get into some of the other specific stuff that doesn't have to do with budget cuts or increases. But what do you think about this so far?
That's what I think about it.
It's a deal. Not everyone gets what they want.
You can't always get what you want. He should have just done that. It would have been better.
But if you're rich sometimes,
yeah, exactly.
You just might find.
Yeah. Yourself on a plane to Epstein Island. I mean, you get what you need. Sorry, I don't, whatever. I don't know how the song. I mean, look, it is going to hurt working people. That's what this deal does, right? And like, notice how, when do we get a say? And I guess we get a say through our Congress people, and we will see whether they will vote this through. We'll see whether Democrats get on board with this. But this means we know where the cuts are coming from, right? We understand that this is all about any programs that working people use, that poor folks use, any extra assistance, that's all going out the window. All that research that in the wake of the most massive global pandemic in however many generations, that's all gone. To say nothing of climate research and climate preparedness, to say nothing of talk about student debt relief, all of the things that were on the docket to help actual people. That's all going away. And at the same time, you've got the Fed over there raising interest rates again on working people. So, we'll never be able to afford that home, or we'll never be able to start that small business. All the stuff that they profess, and all because Joe Biden doesn't want to mint a coin with him with the dark Brandon eyes, lasers. You don't want to mint $1 trillion coin? Are you kidding me? That's the first thing when I'm president, y'all. I'm minting a coin. It's gonna have my cat on it. All right, Chitty's gonna be on that goddamn coin. And then the second thing is, he doesn't want to, the 14th Amendment. He doesn't want to use that. It's like, if this is how little he's going to fight for something so critical to the everyday function of not just this economy, but the global economy, then what about abortion rights? Then what about voting rights? Then what about climate change? Is any of us holding our breath for that?
Yeah, I have the same fears. So obviously we're frustrated. We're about to get into many of the reasons that we're frustrated, but you know what? I want to be fair and balanced by representing the other side's concerns. So why don't we start off with this video?
Because there is nothing real in this bill to enforce. In short, tomorrow's bill is a bunch of fake news and fake talking points that will do nothing to rein in out of control federal spending.
So Lauren Boebert isn't happy about the debt deal, and I'm in a weird position, of course, because I don't like it either. But for exactly opposite reasons from her, it does limit the spending because that's exactly what it does. I don't know what else to tell you. That's what it does. By the way, I don't like that. That's bad, but it's there. You know, if I am camping and I look into a bush and there's a tiger there, I don't like that either, but it's still a tiger, okay? So I don't know what the fake news thing is. It does limit the budget. It cuts it for the next 2 years. That sucks. I don't know why she's not happier about that. I don't know why she's not happier considering all of this other BS that's in the deal. So for instance, the agreement includes new measures to get energy projects approved more quickly by creating a lead agency to oversee reviews and ensure that they're completed in 1 to 2 years. You know, budget stuff. Anyway, it specifically says that the Mountain Valley Pipeline, what's his face's favorite project in West Virginia.
Manchin's extension of his manhood.
Oh, I briefly forgot Manchin.
That's so sweet.
That was a good time. Anyway, Joe Manchin's favorite project, that's gonna be approved. Again, budget stuff. In addition, it claws back $30 billion in unspent money from a previous COVID relief bill signed by Mr. Biden. I don't like that. I also don't like that in a time when over 1 million people died, they didn't spend that money when they could have. It puts an end to Mr. Biden's freeze on student loan repayments and restricts his ability to reinstate such a moratorium, even if there's another pandemic or something. It does not, however, take away the student loan forgiveness that they wanted to stop. So I guess that's something.
There we go.
And then of course, one other thing before you jump in. Hey, what do you know? They're getting their work requirements. It now expands work requirements to adults aged 50 to 54 who don't have children living at home. That's gonna require 80 hours of work in a month. That seems extreme.
Yep.
So that you can earn your $281 maximum in SNAP benefits. Work out the hourly on that, by the way, and you'll get an idea of what America thinks of working Americans. But interestingly, I just want to note this one thing. Matt Brunig had a really interesting response to this. He says, the bill would exempt veterans, the homeless, and people who are children in foster care from the food stamp work requirements. Okay, that's interesting. He goes on to point out that the switching up who's eligible and the paperwork and all that is explicitly designed to knock people out who are technically eligible, but won't know that they need to refile or will make some sort of clerical error. They do this on purpose. People will be thrown out without food, even though they deserve it. That's just what the bureaucracy does. But then he points out this, which I think is really interesting, about the argument that Republicans make for these work requirements. He says veterans are a venerated group in our society. That's why they're exempt. But if work requirements are good for the people who are subject to them, as conservative policy intellectuals claim, then they should especially be applied to venerated groups like veterans who we want good things for, right? And I think that's a great point. It's talked about as, no, this is helpful. It gets them out there, it gives them purpose, it gets them more money, it gets them back in there. Well, then why are you leaving the veterans behind? It almost seems like you don't believe the BS that you're spreading.
No, exactly. They know that work requirements are punitive in this case. And that's why they're putting them on there, because they want to kick more people off of SNAP benefits. By the way, in order to qualify for SNAP benefits, you have to be living, I believe, near or below the poverty line. And so if you are then required to go to work, you have to make sure that those 80 hours are not kicking you above the poverty line, which I'm sure is incredibly low, and it could vary from state to state, to even qualify for those extra $281 to eat. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is why we need universal programs across the board, because these particular sort of carve outs for this group and that group, and it's all used to pit people against one another, to obviously demonize these same groups, whether they are, poor people, working people, people who are with disabilities, who I know are also exempt, but it doesn't matter. It is to slam them with paperwork. And lastly, this is a deal that also cuts out major funding for the IRS so that they can audit billionaires, millionaires, really, and people with a lot of money. And this is so funny because we live in a country where you have to do your own paperwork every single year when it comes to your taxes. They could easily do it for you, but no. They deliberately want to strap us with that bureaucratic nightmare in order to then go after working people and middle income people and never go after the rich people. You see how it all works? You see how we talk about, oh yeah, like socialism, there's lines, there's all kinds of paperwork. Oh my God, nothing works. No, man. You've never been poor in America because things don't work for people who are poor here. They're slammed with bureaucracy, they're waiting in lines, and we don't have socialism in this country.
Yeah. People are talking in the chat, by the way, about work requirements for Congress. Like if it was work requirements and raising money doesn't count, then they would be doomed. 80 hours a month. Yeah, right. Anyway, finally, so Biden needs to sell this to the Democrats. McCarthy needs to sell it to the Republicans. Some combination of the two probably will be needed to pass this. And it seems like exactly what the rich want. It doesn't do anything to hurt them. It doesn't raise their taxes. It limits spending. So, hey, maybe less taxes on them in the future. And so why wouldn't they want this? So my assumption would be that this will definitely get the support. They'll figure out exactly what assortment of centrist Dems or whatever, and most of the Republicans will vote for it. But along the way, lots of people will complain who don't particularly care. Boebert will actually love this while pretending not to because she's supposed to be angry or whatever. Nancy Mace says Republicans got outsmarted by a president who can't find his pants. Okay. So there's definitely some Republicans are criticizing it, but they're criticizing it because they think that it should be more punishing. It should do deeper cuts. It should hurt more people. Someone in the chat said, by the way, could you explain SNAP benefits to people outside of the US? And we've done a lot of stories about SNAP benefits, so I'm not gonna go super in depth, but basically it's money for food assistance for the poorest Americans. There's like 34 million Americans or whatever that go hungry on a daily basis. And this provides on average less than like $130 a month to be able to buy some of the bare necessities food-wise. That's what is continually being debated, continually being cut. A very small benefit that literally provides milk and cheese for people. That's what's being considered.
No, and not
along the way, they're gonna make some pipelines.
Yeah.
Anyway, final point goes to you.
All to say that SNAP benefits also were expanded thanks to the pandemic. And because of that, people could actually eat 3 square meals a day. But now they have to go back to eating 1 meal a day. That's happening in the richest country on earth, people. 1 meal a day.
Yeah, and to take it back to all of the Memorial Day like odes that they gave, like the sacrifice they made so that someday lots of people like them can go hungry, but the rich will do better. Like, oh God, they're all so fake.
It'll trickle down.
They're all so fake. Anyway, okay, everybody, we're gonna take a break, do a little bit of administrative stuff behind the scenes, and we'll be back. Child brides and child workers, it's a dystopia and we're racing headlong towards it. But at least the dystopia won't be gay. So we've got that to look forward to. Anyway, let's turn now, despite my tone and whole general vibe, to some good news that's very limited and will be undercut almost immediately. But first, the good news. It's looking like Texas might have gone woke because of all states, Texas, run by Governor Greg Abbott, who did not stop this, has passed a version of the Crown Act. And I did not expect that to happen. There should be no reason why that's surprising. It's one of the most like reasonable, common sense sorts of pieces of legislation that you can imagine. It's passed in many states over the past few years. But Texas of all places, I am actually pretty surprised. It actually did very well in terms of the vote. In the Senate, 29-1. The House 143-5. So they were able to find a few people who think that you should be legally allowed to discriminate against people based on their hair. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this, although we have talked about it on the show before, the Crown Act stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. It's designed to protect against discrimination, particularly in the workplace, based on hair texture, protective hairstyles, all of that sort of stuff, of which there has been a lot. And in fact, we can bring up a map where you can see some of the progress in passing versions of the Crown Act. And you can see 20 different states have passed it. There's some others where it's potentially pending right now, others where it hasn't even been filed. We'd love to see some progress in there, but you can see a number of states where it is now passed. And so Texas joins California and New York. How often do you hear that sort of thing? But anyway, the fact that most of the Republicans supported, the fact that Greg Abbott didn't block it, with how focused they've all been on not seeming to be woke, I'm actually surprised. What do you think?
I am also surprised, and yet I feel like the other shoe's gonna drop, and pretty soon this act is going to be used to defend white chicks wearing cornrows from discrimination, or just someone being like, why are you wearing cornrows? And then that's it. And then they're gonna have a whole lawsuit. And then Alec is gonna get involved. And then they're gonna, and the Supreme Court's gonna be ruling on white dreads. And then that's just, I feel like that's where we are. That's where we are. But yes, no, it is on its face a good thing. A lot of work goes into pieces of legislation like this. Something that we think is so basic, to not discriminate against someone because of their hair. No, that's not only until recently. This year we passed the Pump Act, the right to go pump during work hours if you're a breastfeeding parent. That's, so we will see. I hope this at least gives some employees and workers and students a leg to stand on if and when they are being discriminated against.
Yeah, and I think the reason I guess I would be worried that this would fall under the rubric of oh God, Texas is gone Bud Light is not the actual scholarly original definition of what woke is supposed to encapsulate, but just the basic idea of, hey, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if over the course of your life, you were to think about things you haven't thought about and consider the experiences of other people. Wouldn't that be great? And we have to fight to get people to accept that that's a good thing. But there's probably plenty of white people who either don't realize that this happens, that people experience discrimination in their workplace, in schools, in all sorts of places, or that they might have done it themselves and haven't questioned it. And maybe this sort of thing helps to push people to question, whether they have done things without realizing it that are discriminatory, to understand and respect the life experiences of people who aren't exactly like them. It's so reasonable. It should be the bare minimum of how you live your life. But unfortunately, there's a ton of pushback, and it literally requires legislation to get people to just naturally evolve to the bare minimum degree. So anyway.
I would like to quote the song "If I Only Had a Brain" from The Wizard of Oz. I could think of things I'd never thunk before, and then I'd sit and think some more. So that is what your commentary reminded me of. This is the right wing in America. If they only had a brain, think of all the things you could think. Amazing.
Yeah, and it should be the most obvious thing. As with all of these things, there's so much that is so reasonable that they would say, no, we don't have to do that. You don't need representation in movies. Why is that not important? But that they obviously understand, because when they feel they've lost the barest minimum amount of it, it breaks their entire reality. It's all this stuff that they definitely understand when it is just about them, but they don't understand that you could apply that to other people too.
Yep.
If they experienced discrimination based on their hair, it would be the most important issue that had ever happened. And yet that can't generalize. But anyway, thankfully some Republicans supported it. So this is reasonable Republicans in Texas. We're gonna turn now to another sort of reasonable Republican in Texas. Very briefly, let's jump to our D block. Ted Cruz said something, and at least at first glance, I agree with it, and that's weird. It has to do with the incredibly awful anti-LGBTQ law in Uganda. He had this to tweet: "This Uganda law is horrific and wrong. Any law criminalizing homosexuality or imposing the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality is grotesque and an abomination. All civilized nations should join together in condemning this human rights abuse. Hashtag LGBTQ."
What?
And I had to check so many times because of course this is Twitter now, and so you can't trust anything you see there. wait, is this a different person pretending to be Ted Cruz? No, it is. So I'm not ruling out hacking, but as of right now, it seems like he's just being reasonable. And he's right, it is terrible. It states that bill that any person that, quote, holds out as a lesbian, gay, transgender, a queer, or any other sexual or gender identity that is contrary to the binary categories of male and female. I don't even see how the sexuality stuff is contrary, even if you believe that there was a binary of gender, but whatever, that's what they're saying, could face up to 10 years in prison. It calls for sentences of life in prison for anyone engaging in gay sex, and the death penalty would be given to those convicted of aggravated homosexuality, a broad term that could include gay sex with a minor or with someone who is HIV positive. By the way, there's already a version of this. It was just passed in Florida. The death penalty for child, molestation or whatever is, I mean, philosophically, it's not even that distinct from this, considering the Republicans that run Florida. So I don't know, is this a criticism of Ron DeSantis from Ted Cruz? But he was criticized, we're gonna get to that. But first, what do you think about him being kind of right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, Ted Cruz does this all the time, right? He's done this with, Cuba, where his dad is from, right? Where, gay folks fled persecution under Castro, right? And he talks about that. But then he has no understanding when it actually comes to the United States. I mean, after a year ago, we were talking about how Ted Cruz, in the wake of the Dobbs decision, rescinding abortion rights, was saying, yeah, Obergefell and versus Hodges is next, i.e. gay marriage is next. And he kind of just sort of like, rolled that off. Oh yeah, it's probably next and this is fine. That is discrimination. Like, I understand you think there's a big difference between obviously like, the death penalty and, not allowing gay marriage, but it is a short slope backwards to that, or forwards, or wherever they want to go, down.
Down into the depths of hell.
Down.
Yeah, and by the way, you do not have to dig very far into the people who support the one to find out that they would support the other. And you know what? Why don't we get into some of the criticism that Ted Cruz received for just saying, hey, let's not kill people for being gay, right? No? Oh dear God. Here are some comments. Lauren Witzke, who is another person who tweets and also a Senate candidate. Those are now the same thing. Anyway, says they are protecting their youth. Unlike the lawmakers in Texas, the Uganda government recognizes that if you give an inch, the LGBTQ mafia will take a mile. While you guys struggle to stop drag queens from twerking on the laps of toddlers, when the hell is that happening? Anyway, they stop it before it starts. Texans can't protect their borders. Texans can't protect their kids. Texans can't protect cities from becoming liberal assholes. Worries about your own state before you worry about Uganda. She's a candidate anyway, but that's how I hear her. Anyway, to be clear, she is against the LGBTQ mafia because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Meanwhile, she supports executing people for being gay. Talk about taking a mile. You think the state should be able to kill people because of who they want to have sex with. But okay,
mafia, LGBTQ mafia. Like, I think you saw Queer Eye for like a second and then was like, there's a mafia. Anyway.
It's scary stuff. She is persuasive though. I did see this other tweet of hers, which opened my eyes. Did you know that if you put the word Pride Month right next to each other without a space, and then you only look at some of the letters and for some reason make them rainbow colored, it has the word demon? I don't know why that matters, but she finds it very compelling.
Like, girl, sell something on Etsy, bitch, okay? Get a hobby. You're so boring. You're so boring. Like, what happened? Your wine subscription, club subscription ran out. All right, go to Costco, get yourself a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc and sit your ass down.
Yeah.
How bored are people these days?
Yeah. I love the idea that like they're demons for being gay, living their life, they're gay. You're defending a country executing people for their sexuality, but they're demonic. I'm not like a big reader of the Bible or whatever. I don't chill with Jesus, but I have a feeling that if you had to choose between the two, I don't think that would be a tough one as to which is more in line with demons. Anyway, with that said, that's all the time we have for this hour of the show. There's more to come in the aftermath, everybody, though, so we hope to see you there. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.